Hello, and welcome to the Be Your Own Dang Hero podcast. I'm your host, Pauline McKinney. I'm so jazzed to get into today's episode because it's such a good one. The title is Yeah, I'm a hard pass right now. And it's all about the refusal of the call. So, if you have your hero's journey map that you found on my website and downloaded or gone to Google, the refusal of the call is the step that comes after the call to adventure. You can go to my website, download the map if you don't have one yet. But it is a legit step in the hero's journey for a reason, because it's incredibly common, right? How often are we having dreams that we say no to, that we don't take action on? This episode is all about digging in and talking about that. So before we go into the Joseph Campbell part and, my own resources, I wanted to just get started with a story around my own experience refusing the call. For as long as I can remember, I've had a dream to start my own business. I've wanted it for so long. And I've had multiple dabbles with that in various forms, whether it was an Etsy store or side consulting gigs or trying to do a drop ship green goods company, lots of different ideas that I've had. And anytime that I've had success and there's been a chance to grow those different forms, I've said no. I have refused the call. And at first, before I had kids, I refused the call out of fear. I was scared to leave what I had and leave the safety and comfort of what I had because I've always had a good corporate job. And then after kids, I did it. I usually said no to starting my own thing out of responsibility because I now was responsible for providing for my kids and making sure they had the best. And that meant that I had to have a stable income. And so it's just over the last year that I've really taken this leap into starting my own business. And I'm here on the journey and I'm sharing that with you as we go. And I'm starting this podcast, which is a whole other journey, but it's because I want to walk this hero's journey and adventure with you. And I'm hoping that you're saying yes to your biggest adventures right alongside and going through this with me, because we all have dreams that want to be lived out, don't we? But before we can live out those dreams, sometimes we have to refuse the call. So Joseph Campbell says that to refuse the call means stagnation. And that's the thing, right? Sometimes we're not ready. We're not ready for our dreams. We're not ready for the adventure. We're not ready for the desires that are calling our names. And so we choose the comfort of the known. When you choose the known eventually becomes stagnant. And so choosing to stay here in the known world, not going on your adventures, living the same day on repeat, you are essentially choosing stagnation, and you do lose that sense of aliveness that comes with answering the call and taking the leap. That's the trade-off. And so there are generally three categories of refusals. And if you think back to times that you've refused the call, can you group your refusal into these categories? I'd be curious to know. I know I can. The first general category of refusal is going to be the fear of leaving the familiar / comfort zone. You just don't want to leave. You are terrified of leaving. Bilbo Baggins from The Hobbit, not a fan of adventure, didn't want to leave the Shire, and he loved his life in the Shire and wanted to just stay comfortable where he was. Then you have Marlin from Finding Nemo, who was traumatized and terrified of leaving their anemone and wouldn't even he put all that onto poor Nemo and wouldn't let them adventure out into this great big ocean because he wanted to stay in the safety of the known and the familiar. Who can't identify with that? That's so universal, right? Then you have the second category of refusal. And this refusal is out of the sense of duty to stay, the sense of duty towards other people, towards your family, much like Luke Skywalker, before the tragedy happened where he lost his family, when he saw the hologram and he delivered R2D2 to Ben Kenobi, and Ben invites him to go on this adventure and learn all about the Force, and he's like, I can't do that. I have to go. I have to go see my uncle and do all my chores. He had a sense of duty to stay with his family, to serve his family, because he had already been told that he wasn't going to get to have his dream of being a pilot. So he had to stay here and he felt very obligated. Another example of the sense of duty is Moana, who had always felt called to adventure. She felt called to the ocean to go explore it. And she felt a sense of duty to stay and be a responsible leader like her father. And so that is another example. And then the third category of refusal is this idea around disbelief or unworthiness. Like you don't believe that you have what it takes or that you're special enough or that you can do it or that you're not worthy to go on this adventure and make your dreams come true. And one example can be Harry Potter, who didn't really believe he was a wizard at first. He didn't really know if he had what it took. And he was kind of in disbelief, as was his extended family, as well as Neo from The Matrix. Neo did not believe he was the one. He was constantly, until the moment he made a choice to embrace and accept his journey and the adventure, he was in disbelief and trying to look for proof that he wasn't the one. And so, one thing to notice is that all of these heroes, even though they initially refused, their story didn't end there because they ended up on the journey. And I mean, often in their stories, it wasn't by choice. So they didn't get to answer the call consciously. They didn't get to be seduced or enticed. They got carried in, kicking and screaming, whether they wanted to be on that adventure or not. They were carried in and carried on to do amazing things, right? Joseph Campbell talks about how a lot of times when you refuse the call, you're basically refusing your very own interests, which is so true, isn't it? And sometimes that can lead to a lot of dissatisfaction in life that can keep on building. And so while I think that it's perfectly acceptable to refuse the call at times, I would caution that living a life where you constantly only choose the familiar and the known and you constantly say no to adventure can lead to it can lead to dissatisfaction. It can lead to a life that feels empty because your aliveness comes when you say yes. That's when you start to feel alive because you are saying yes to your very own self, your very own desires. And I don't know if you've heard of Bronnie Ware, but she was a palliative nurse who wrote a book. I think it was called The Regrets of the Dying. And I'll link to her in the resources section. She has a blog post where she lists the top 5 regrets of her patients that were dying had. And the number one regret from her book and from her blog post says, and I quote, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. So while it's normal and okay to refuse the call, don't let your own desires and your own dreams die and you end up with living a life full of regret that you didn't live the life that you wanted to live. And sometimes you cannot refuse the call. Sometimes I really believe that when you say no to a call, sometimes you don't really have an option and things will happen that carry you in anyway. That can be something like losing your job anyway and clearing the path for something better, but you were just too scared to leave because you didn't want to make the choice. It could look like a health diagnosis when you had been neglecting your body and now you have to take care of your body. And so sometimes life just does that for you on your behalf, and you don't even get a choice. You're about to go on this adventure, whether you want to or not. And there's a quote by Seneca that says, "The fates lead those who will, and those who won't, they drag." So sometimes you're not even going to have a choice, and that's okay too. But be aware of that stagnation will lead into destruction, as I talked about a couple episodes ago in the ultimate cheat codes. So be aware of that. And a whole, like, my reframe and my perspective is, it's totally okay to refuse the call when it's not the right time and even when you don't feel ready. But a couple things. One, it's important to understand that the door to your dream may close and not reopen again at some point. So if you have a dream of doing something, of trying something, of being someone, you can say no, but just know at some point that door is going to close and you will lose your chance to do that. Number two, it's also important to be clear and very honest with yourself about why you're refusing the call. Are you refusing the call because you just need to stay in the familiar for a little longer because you don't feel ready? Are you refusing the call because you have responsibilities to people in your life or to yourself around something else? Or are you refusing the call because you don't feel worthy or deserving or ready yet? There's no wrong answer, and it's just important to be clear and honest with yourself. Number three, can you make a plan and a timeline to when you can start taking steps towards your dream so that you keep it alive? Are there things that you can think about or put into place or clear or do to keep this dream of yours alive in the meantime? And number four, can you be aware and accept that you may be called into this adventure anyway, whether you want to or not? And so let's talk about tools. My number one tool for when you're going through a refusal of the call is a journal. And to really be honest with yourself, because no one else is going to see it, and talk to yourself about it. Name your fears. What are the fears that are coming up for you when you're about to take action, when you're about to click submit on an application, when you're about to send in your resignation, when you're about to end a relationship or go move? What are the fears that are stopping you? Name them and start to work with them and understand them. And another thing you can journal about would be, what can you do today to get ready for the leap the next time you're called? So if now isn't the right time to make that move, how can you start preparing yourself mentally so that the next time you get that chance, you're going to do it? You're not going to say no. You're just going to have that courage and you're going to take the leap, because there is nothing that can compare to the aliveness and the excitement you feel when you say yes to your biggest life and your biggest dreams and making that a reality, even though you're scared and you don't know if it's going to work out. And so I wanted to read a passage from Joseph Campbell's book, Reflections on the Art of Living, just to take us, just to end the episode on this quote. I think it's so beautiful. Okay, here's what he says. It takes courage to do what you want. Other people have a lot of plans for you. Nobody wants you to do what you want to do. They want you to go on their trip, but you can do what you want. I did. You deserve the life of your dreams. You deserve your biggest, best life. You deserve to live a life full of things that you've always wanted to do. And that starts with saying yes to the call.